Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fat Muscle Project podcast. Myself and Lisa are here to talk about part two of how to set up your diet and the importance of everything related to that. If you didn't hear part one, we dropped it right before Christmas or around Christmas to talk about how to set yourself up metabolically, hormonally, in a healthy place to be able to start your next diet because a lot of people, Lisa, are starting their diets around January. Well, this is part two. This is where we're going to talk about how to set your calories up, how to set your macros up. And I know, Lisa, whenever we attend events or we do these podcasts or we just get DMs, people ask us, well, how do I set it up? It's very hard to set this up for everyone specifically, but I've got a method that I use, and I'm sure you've got things that you'll talk about and add that just hits everybody in general. And then you'll see, at least you'll see something to where you can then measure and make changes off of. So I've got a pretty good system here. But before that, is there anything else that you want to talk about as far as setting the diet up? I know you've got probably clients hitting you up to start in January, right? I do. I've got a full roster getting ready to start.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. And what I tell most people in our initial call is always, let's talk about expectations. I think this is so important because if you're like, oh, I want to lose 20 pounds and by February type of thing, or I want to, maybe you don't even have a time frame and you're just like, I want to lose 50 pounds, but you're secretly thinking you're going to have achieved that by March. I don't like that. I want to set realistic expectations. So I guess one place to start off with in talking about this would be rate of weight loss that we can possibly perhaps expect. And I don't know how you go about it if you talk about it in pounds, half a pound a week or a pound a week or whatever. And I usually like to say to my clients, kind of like 1% of body weight per week could be realistic. And I'm saying that because for men, of course, like I like to go off the body weight percentage rather than just giving, a pound or two. But nonetheless, of course, this is just a general rule of thumb. And most of the time, it's going to come off quicker in the beginning and probably the last 5 to 10 pounds a lot slower. So, yeah, what's your way of going about this?
I, I think that's a perfect way to do it too. And if people, I generally categorize people into two different areas. Most of this that we're going to talk about is not going to be for contest prep because if you're going to step on stage, these recommendations we give, they're great for somebody starting out. But if you're getting on stage, it needs to be very advanced and very specific to you, right? If you're the dad trying to lose 30 pounds or the mom trying to lose 20 pounds, this will get you going in the right direction and it'll make really good progress. To step on stage, you want to lose the most fat that you can to get to really an unhealthy standpoint, is what it is. But to be the leanest, most ripped physique that you can be on stage for a competition, which your body will not stay at. So, those macros and that setup, even the supplementation, that's going to be way different, right? So, just know if you're dieting to stage, you could do this and get somewhat there, but you really need an advanced approach. Honestly, just use a coach. But with that being said, rate of loss, I always tell people if you're 200 pounds or over, you're probably going to lose a couple pounds a week in the beginning. And then towards the end, it's probably going to slow to a pound a week. As long as you're losing a pound a week, you're still making progress. And now, if you're a big individual, if you're 250, 300 pounds plus, you can lose 3 to 4 pounds a week. I've had people lose 5 pounds a week. The more body fat you have, the more you can lose, and you don't have to worry about losing muscle, as long as hormones are in a good place, because muscle loss happens at the end when someone's very lean and they don't have a lot of fat to use as fuel.
Right.
When we're heavy, we have a lot of fat to use as fuel. Man, we can be pretty aggressive and lose 4 or 5 pounds a week, and it's going to be okay. It's when you get down towards the end, you should never maintain 4 to 5 pounds lost a week. It needs to naturally drop down. So, Lisa, I guess I like that 1% rule. If someone wants to just look at a basic number, I would say ladies under 180 pounds, probably pound to 2 pounds a week
Right.
is totally normal. I think anything over that outside the first few weeks is probably a little too fast.
Right.
But a lot of people don't want to. They if they're losing 3 pounds, like, I want to let it keep going. So
For
I
sure.
think success is a pound to 2 pounds a week is success. Like,
Right.
that's good fat loss. You don't have to worry too much about muscle.
Yeah, and like to be honest, I literally just realized that I was calculating it kilograms. So like, if I'm talking about 1% and I have someone who's 70 kilos or something like that, it would be 0.7 grams. But yeah, anyway, no, I mean that makes a lot of sense in that way too. So rather setting the expectation lower and then they're excited that they're losing faster as opposed to thinking like, oh, you promised me I was going to lose a pound and a half per week. Like what's happening here? But yeah, so tell me how do we create that? How do you create the calorie deficit? How can someone set up their calorie deficit?
Yeah. So if you didn't go back and listen to part one, now is the time to go back and listen to why it's important to get your calories up. What I'm about, if you listen to that episode and you know your calories going in, create a 500 calorie deficit. It's literally that simple. Leave your protein the same. So as long as you listen to our last episode and everything's in a good place and you count your macros, subtract some carbs, maybe a little bit of fat, or maybe mostly carbs, right? So we're not going to get into the details there. If you don't know where to start, this four-step process is really going to help 99% of people out there. I helped develop this in 2000, man, when was it? I think it was like 2018. I was at First Forum and we put on conferences there to educate our Legionnaires on how to be coaches and coach clients because we had a lot of people that they just didn't know what they were doing. So they brought people like me in and a few others, and we came up with this process, and it just literally worked really well. So this is something that where I continue to preach this to this day. I don't use it as a coach because I've got my own ways of personally analyzing each person. So if you've got a coach out there, don't go to your coach and be like, "Well, Gorman gave me this four-step process. It's different than yours." No, your coach knows you, and they dialed that into you. This is if someone doesn't know their macros, this is what you do. So this is four steps, and I'm going to use a couple details here, a couple examples, a female and a male, and I'm also going to put this in the show notes. So don't feel like you have to take notes. I'm going to go and type it in the show notes so you can just screen loss it and apply it. So the first thing, it's four steps. If I have a 200-pound female and her goal weight is 140 pounds, so take whoever your client is, take their goal weight. Step one is to set them at 1 gram per pound of their goal weight. All right. You're never going to have a 300-pound female that says, I want to weigh 250 pounds, and you set them at 250 grams of protein. That's never going to happen. What is their ultimate goal weight? Right. So 140 pounds. So step one is set that 140 grams of protein. Step one.
I'm sorry, I'm just gonna intersect there briefly. I really like that because a lot of people get hung up about like lean body weight and blah blah blah, and then the person's like, but I don't know exactly my lean mass, and I haven't taken a DEXA and blah blah. So having just setting it as the goal body weight is, I think, an easy way to get around that debate of like, should it be set at lean body mass or not?
Yeah, it's literally splitting hairs if you just use your ultimate goal weight, not your goal weight for 2 months from now, like your ultimate goal weight. So step one is 140 pounds for this lady. Step two is to figure out what's your total calories. So if you take your ultimate goal weight times 10 to 12, that's going to give you a deficit of calories most of the time, right? If you wanted to maintain, you take it times 13 to 15. If you want to gain muscle and gain weight, you take it times 15, 14, 15, 16. Well, no one's really doing that, right? So to lose weight, you take 140. Instead of taking it times 10, which would give you 1400 calories, I tell people take it times 12 because it gives you a little bit more calories because you're going to stall and need to drop calories at some point. So if you take 140, which is a goal weight, times 12, that gives you 1680 calories. For a 200-pound female, 1680 calories is a really good starting spot. It's not super low, it's not super high. Okay. Step three is to just set your fats. I just like to generically put this set it to 50 to 60 grams a day. Set it at 60 if you want. That's not low. That's not high. That's perfectly fine for everyone out there, even for guys. So if we set that at 60 grams of fat, that's 540 calories. And then step four is finally you fill it. Now we know our protein is 140. We know our fats is 60 grams. Set up the rest of those calories to make up your 1680 at carbs. That gives us 145 carbs.
Mhm.
So here's a 200-pound female that wants to drop weight and get to 140 pounds. Here's her macros: 140 protein, 145 carbs, 60 fats. I know that was fast. Go look at the show notes. You'll see it step by step and literally just plug in your numbers and it will give you the step by step process. Um,
An easy method. I really like it. I think it's super simple. And I mean, if you're listening to this and you're a coach, then obviously, or even if you're listening to this and you've been tracking macros for a while, exactly like John said, then I mean, that method might be a bit too simple and you might want to work with, hey, I know my maintenance at the moment. I'm going to create a deficit by 10% or up to 25%. I don't really like going below 25% in terms of a deficit for Gen Pop. But I think this is super simple for literally, someone who might be trying to lose weight for the first time. I think we've spoken about this before. I in men like to have the fat a little bit higher than 60, but this is really like splitting hairs. As you said, someone losing weight for the first time, great starting point, and we don't need to talk about the minute details here. So in terms of diet, let's assume they have this set up. Would you give someone right off the bat some refeed days with that, or some, free meals with that, or is this what you would start off with for, every day?
So the refeed concept is something where you and I are going to do a podcast on that at some point in the future because we've talked about this a couple times. There's really good times to have them and there's times not to have them. So if you're very strict on the diet, what I would tell this 200-pound female eating 140, 145, and 60 or her macros, go 2 weeks and just eat those calories and see what your body does. If you're dropping and everything's fine, at some point it's good, and this is a true deficit and she's dropping. At some point, it's good to have a refeed and a carb up, but it does not need to be a giant one. We're dieting, okay? So I like to see maybe an extra 50 to 100 carbs added on top of the normal diets once a week. That's it. That's an extra 200 to 400 calories. So now you go from, mid 1600s to mid 1800s, or maybe even to 2000. That's maintenance for the day. So you're still dieting 6 days a week. One day you're at maintenance. It does some really good things. It boosts your metabolic rate and leptin. It drops cortisol and it extends out fat loss. We did the research at USF, myself, Dr. Bill Campbell, and others, where we studied either doing refeeds or not doing refeeds. And the refeed groups, now they were strict, that dieted for 8 weeks, they lost fat. They didn't lose as much muscle. They enjoyed their diet more, and their metabolic rate stayed higher. So there's a point to have those. But there's also the other side. If you're eating off the plan, if you're having too big of a massive day, like a big cheat day or a giant 3,000 calorie cheat meal, you're going to take one step forward, one step back. And Lisa, you made a good post on social that we talked about behind the scenes in some messages to where sometimes you just need to just eat your normal calories and don't do refeeds. And I think that's a perfect example of when people shouldn't have one.
Yeah, I
And
really think sometimes the metabolism, like the message just doesn't get through when, let's just assume you've just come off of a maintenance phase for several months and you did it really well. And then, after 5 days of dieting, there's literally no need to give your body more again just because you're only 5 days into the diet. And you're like confusing your body's message. You're confused. It's like, ah, for 5 days now you're telling me I was meant to lose weight and now you're giving me a refeed or even two in a row. Like, okay, well then I'm just gonna maintain and not lose. Like, I have seen that a few times where literally the key was just a couple of weeks or several weeks or, for some time just having the same calories. And some people might even prefer that from like a mental standpoint of like, I'm gonna have the same thing for a while, and then only if I really notice I'm getting hungrier, I'm feeling a little bit less energetic in the gym, then we're going to start incorporating the refeeds as kind of like a tool in our toolbox.
yeah, I very rarely do I like to see back-to-back refeeds in the Gen Pop community. If you're shredded and you need that boost in leptin and you're very depleted, on that's a different story. And then one more thing I want to point out to people, refeeds, you can look at them, your muscles when you eat. So this lady's eating 145 calories. If she's working out 4 to 5 days a week, your muscle cells get depleted of glycogen and the carbohydrates that you eat. Well, she's only eating 145. So after a couple weeks, her muscle cells are depleted of glycogen. So when she does eat 220 or 240 carbs for her refeed day, she's going to have room in that muscle cell to fill it back up with glycogen. But if someone's going either too high or too often, once you refill your glycogen cells, if you go beyond that, it's called spilling and you spill into the fat cell. So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure you're plenty depleted. And that's why I don't do the big refeeds. Now, could I have this lady eat 400 carbs on a Sunday? Yeah, but I'd probably have to take her keto or like literally 40 carbs a day, which is not what we want to do, right? Like no one's going to maintain that. So it just we'll go into details on refeeds, but I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, awesome. So now let's talk about training. What should someone set up their training as if they're starting this dieting phase, this week or whatever?
So training and cardio, I kind of look at together. The more stressful your life is, the lower your sleep is. You don't want to add 6 days of workouts to that. Start at 3 to 4 and make sure you can consistently hit the gym. And then I like to add cardio in at, 3 days of 15 minutes of hard, steady state walking. Go put your headphones in, walk until you breathe. Like it'd be hard to have a conversation with somebody, but you could. It's just kind of, good, steady state, heart healthy cardio at 15 minutes 3 times a week, and then you're working out 3 to 4 days a week. Now, if you're somebody that doesn't have high stress, you get plenty of sleep a night, you can train 5 days a week. Totally fine with that. And then do 3 days of cardio. That's totally fine too. I just don't like to see people pile on the training and especially pile on the cardio because your body gets used to that steady state after, 3, 4 weeks. And then you're basically maintaining your body's used to that steady state. Now you have to add more. Well, if you're doing 6, 7 days a week, now you're doing like at 15 minutes, now you're doing 6, 7 days a week of like 20 to 25. And like it adds up very fast. So start low and then add it in every few weeks if you're stalling. If not, leave everything the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that you're highlighting it's good to start off with the minimal effective dose and then using the other tools and the toolbox as needed as we make adjustments because that time is going to come where you are going to stall. Yes, sometimes it does happen where we can keep macros the same from the beginning until the end of the diet. That's rare, but it does happen. I have had actually someone just ask me this week, how often do you need to change calories? Why aren't we changing anything? I'm like, well, things are working well. Why should we change anything? You don't need to add anything or cut any more calories if you're losing at the weight that we're expecting. But at the same time, if we're constantly making changes and like it's going to be hard to decide or say where the change even comes from if you change cardio and macros and everything at the same rate all the time. So yeah, I think starting at the minimal effective dose, building on that, I think that's a really, really good starting point. And even though this was a simple method that you just laid out, I think it's a great starting point for most people who are starting from scratch.
Yeah. You brought up a good point. If you're dropping, especially weekly, and you're dropping, which I know we're going to touch on one more time. We did in part one, but we'll touch on it again here. If it's not broken, don't try and fix it. Like there's been plenty of times back when I used to like work on my cars when I was a teenager, I was always trying to tinker and I would break shit because it wasn't broken. Like I was trying to make something better that was not broken. So
I
if it's
think you quite often see that with unexperienced or insecure coaches, and I probably was there in the
yeah,
beginning as well, where you feel like you need to give the client a change just so
yeah,
that they feel like it's worth the money. But if you're just like it's working well, you don't need to feel bad for sending your client a one sentence response. It's just like, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an amazing job.
it,
It might feel weird, but nothing to change.
coaches out there listening, I've been doing this almost 20 years now. I still struggle with that. My clients that are just killers and they're just the Renee Schneiders of the world, right? Like and the Carrie Ferrises, and I can go on and name other people that are just ultra dialed in the off season. Sometimes I just feel like I'm like, man, I don't like they're making my job so easy. Like, what can I do? But sometimes it's just more communication to make sure that you understand 100%. But sometimes you're right. You just have to leave it as is.
Absolutely.
It's a good sign. That's a really good sign.
Absolutely. Awesome. Did you want to add anything to this topic? I know we're going to go record a full length episode at some other stage about, how to set up your diet even more in detail, but I think this was a good overview.
Yeah, check out the show notes, everyone. I'm going to put in as soon as we get done doing the podcast, an example for a 300-pound guy. But it's basically you can take this four-step process. And then just real quick to touch on, how much to lose each week. That was the last episode we touched on that, right? We didn't touch on that in this episode. We just did these
Oh,
back to back. So I'm like
no,
losing
we,
my.
we did start off with how much to expect to lose, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
because
then, yeah, we've covered that. See old man Gorman showing up.
sounds
Um,
good.
I think that's it. I think we've given people enough to run with. Of course, if you guys ever want to message us, we're never going to add you to an email list. Like my email, Lisa's email, it's in the show notes. We get people that ask questions all the time. We will happily answer your question and get you headed in the right direction, no matter what it is. Don't feel like you're bothering us. We want you to email us to us if you've got ideas for topics for other people that you want to hear on the show or a question for the show, even if you want to be anonymous. Just hit us up. So we want to wish everyone a very happy new year, very much success in your diet, and stay tuned to 2026 because Lisa, we've got some really good topics coming up. We were just talking before we started this off. Um, really good stuff coming up. So I won't.
And aside from the topics, the last thing I want to say is again, the Fat Muscle Meetup or Academy Meetup in July. It's going to come sooner than everybody thinks. Just mark your dates 24th until the 26th, I believe, right?
Yep, the weekend of the 24th. It's going to be awesome. So you guys enjoy the rest of 2025 and kick ass in 2026. For myself and Lisa, we're out of here. See you guys.